Welcome back to Coaches Exploring the Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And today we're on to chapter 17, Contemplating Death. And I'll just read the first part of the chapter. It is truly a great cosmic paradox that one of the best teachers in all of life turns out to be death. No person or situation could ever teach you as much as death has to teach you. While someone could tell you that you are not your body, death shows you. While someone could remind you of the insignificance of the things that you cling to, death takes them all away in a second. While people can teach you that men and women of all races are equal and that there's no difference between the rich and the poor, death instantly makes us all the same. The question is, are you going to wait until that last moment to let death be your teacher? The end.
And yeah.
Yeah, for me, I love. I don't know, this for me anyway. This new take on death. Like I don't think I would say that I've been afraid of death, but I certainly would avoid thinking about it, whatnot. Um, I think that the time, when I go to somebody's funeral, is usually the time when I contemplate my own mortality and ask myself some of the questions that Singer is pointing to in this chapter. But other than that, it's not a topic I generally think about.
Yeah, actually, as you're speaking there, Greg, it just it's often not only a topic that people don't think about, but it's often a topic that people are very happy to avoid
Mm.
or keen to avoid, or yeah, and that's kind of interesting too.
It says a little further down, it says, a wise being completely and totally embraces the reality, the inevitability, and the unpredictability of death, which implies that if you don't do those things, you're not a wise person.
Well, and the way I'm seeing it in this moment is death is the ultimate unknown.
Mm.
And we know that the unknown scares people. You know, what could it be like? And there's all sorts of beliefs about what happens after death. Some of them are wonderful, some of them aren't so wonderful. People just don't want to go there.
Yeah. Well, you reminded me when my mom passed away in 2020. My parents were Salvation Army ministers. Well, in the Salvation Army, the phrase they use is "promoted to glory."
Mm.
So it's like there's a great
Mm,
way to think about death. You know, like they spend as Christians, they spend their life um, preparing for, working towards uh, going to heaven when they die. It's not I mean, although there's grief and sorrow and sadness, it's more of a celebration than anything.
It's a transition. It's akin to birth. We celebrate birth, yet we avoid death. It's so interesting.
Mm.
I know some of you know this. I was a visiting nurse. I was a hospice nurse, so I helped with a lot of that last transition for a lot of people. And most of the time, what I saw, the most beautiful transitions were the ones where my patients slowly but surely let go of things, possessions, then people, then everything else, and they slipped away. But I like to think of those kind of events as accepting death and fully embracing it, just as a transition.
Yeah, I love what you said before. It's something about the unknown, and that, I guess, is another. He says at the beginning, it's truly a great cosmic paradox, because, like, yeah, you don't know, and when you've gone, there's nothing left to know. And it's more about if we want to contemplate death, I guess what we're truly contemplating is what about the others? The thing is, you've gone. Or I think Jamie Snart said it regarding another subject, but it's not about death itself. It's about thinking that you can't cope with that, as you called it, a transition.
Mhm.
And neither of those scenarios are actually true. They're not in truth.
One thing that stood out to me in these first 4 or 5 pages is he repeats the phrase "death is a great teacher" probably 3 or 4 times, which is the first time I can recall anyway, like the exact same words being repeated so many times. So I'm like, okay, he's trying to tell us something here.
There's a message.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, what he mainly speaks of is, to me at least, the message is start living if you're not, or if your perspective on life is so bad that you're contemplating death. Message is here, so clear in this, for all your resentments, for all your irritations, big or small or whatever, like, so insignificant. You change your perspective, just, and this is, as he says, just walk outside. How many times have you walked outside? You don't even know where you go, what you're looking at. So why not just walk outside and marvel at the rows of houses in front of you if you're not in the middle of the countryside, or just the air that is there to breathe, and the rain that is there to get wet under, and the soggy dog that you need to dry and smelly too. It's like marvelous.
Also, I'm thinking back to his earlier chapters, which we reference often, Greg, when he says, you're like, we're a speck of dirt on a planet floating in the middle of nothing. Like, why are you worrying about your hair? Why are you worrying about what's for dinner? Why are you worrying about what people think about you? It's like, to talk about insignificance, bring it right down to all these things that we fill our minds with every day. Instead of, as you say, Elaine, the marvel of it all. There's one sentence where he brings it right down to that. While someone could remind you of the insignificance of things that you cling to, and that's what you said, Vanessa, when people let go of things and people and their possessions, that's when they can, they can let go and we would say be at peace. Yet somehow, as we're going through in this, people we're still clinging to the importance of the things, objects, stuff, thoughts, beliefs.
Yeah. Love that, Lynn. It speaks to me as well of, we in our work we talk about the "I'll be happy when" story, and it's almost as if like we live our lives entirely thinking, because that "I'll be happy when" is when we just don't know. When I'm rich, well, you've already got millions in the bank, but you want more, so I'll be even happier when. And then so basically you'll be happy when you're dead. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. Or at least we live in that way. You know, I'll be happy when, and it seems like we're just waiting for that moment, which sounds kind of crazy to me now. And he brings it back to awareness, you know, from the line. He says death, as Greg so rightly said, one of the instances when he says death is a great teacher, but who lives with that level of awareness? And like, instantly, yeah, it's about being aware that current and normal everyday thinking isn't going to get us to any level of awareness, but being aware of that, you can instantly change the perspective and perhaps change that cosmic paradox that he speaks about in the first line. So death is no longer a paradox. Such.
This whole chapter reminds me of one of my favorite exercises from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, where he asks you to imagine being at a funeral and all the people are giving their eulogies and things. And then you come to the realization it's your funeral. You know, what would you want people to say about you, how you lived your life and what you contributed and things. And then he invites you to then, okay, now live accordingly. So it kind of reminded, when I think back to that exercise, that, oh yeah, I've done this before. I've contemplated what my death would look like, or in light of my death, what would the people around me say about the way I lived my life, what impact I had on them, things like that. He says, think honestly about what you would do with your last week. What a wonderful thought to contemplate. Which wasn't my first thought about contemplating that. Then ponder this question. If that's really what you would do with your last week, what are you doing with the rest of your time? What are you doing with your life? That is what death asks you.
I got such a clear answer when you asked that question the first time. What I got was, what I would want is to deeply and meaningfully have touched people's hearts, and that's what they remember me for.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and when you asked the question, Greg, I was thinking to the distinction between being and doing. You know, how do I want people to remember that I was with them, or how I treated them, versus, you know, what did I do, successes or whatever stuff, and that literally came to me as you asked that question. That the Stephen Covey, you know, now imagine this was your funeral. That used to make me bristle years ago when I first read that book. Like, you know, I'll be saying I'm not, you know, I haven't achieved this or done that or stuff, and just to be able to see that, you know, to see that, feel that differently in terms of what looks to be important. Yeah.
I used to joke with my colleagues, it was like, you know, on our deathbeds, we're not going to be lying there going, oh my God, I just need to run one more pricing report.
I remember those thoughts when I was working.
Yeah.
They seem so funny now.
I'm thinking of the fact that one might contemplate death. As I read this chapter and the line I read before, death is a great teacher, but who lives with that level of awareness? And then he says, it doesn't matter. And I sort of stopped there, and I had Freddie Mercury in my head, Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, put a gun against his head now, pulled the trigger now, he's dead. And it just occurred to me that perhaps, I think when he wrote that song, he already knew that he had AIDS, HIV, And I'm imagining that if the song is about him contemplating his own death, then indeed the lines, he goes on further in the song and says, nothing really matters.
Mm.
Anyone can see nothing really matters to me. Because indeed, it doesn't matter. The fact of death itself doesn't matter. So I've been humming the song all morning. It's been running through my head.
It's a new one now.
Yes.
Great song.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but when he went through his thing about, like your next breath could be your last breath, this could be our last Zoom call, like, whatever task or event you can think of, somebody has died doing it. Driving a car, flying a plane, making a cup of tea. I don't know. It's like since I read that last night, I've been like, oh, is this going to be my last breath? Is this my last cup of tea? Is this my last whatever? But what I found was like you move on from that kind of, oh no, kind of this could be, to if it is, kind of to his single, like, what am I doing with my life? It made me think too, like, of my kids are away at university, but like when we talk on the phone or when I see them and they're leaving to go back to school, am I conveying that I love them enough? Am I appreciating our relationship enough, or am I just taking for granted that, well, they'll be back in a couple months, no big deal, or if you have a disagreement with somebody, like, is it really, do you want to leave it like that? But my wife has a sign in her room that says something like never go to bed angry or something like that, which has been kind of a good rule.
I think that all points to not taking anything for granted, doesn't it? I mean, you started out by talking about Elaine, when you were just, look at the houses in front of you, or the rain that's falling on you, or whatever. And it's how much do we take for granted in what we have in every day. And people, it's so funny you're talking about your kids, Greg. So my sister was here, she left. I didn't know she was not coming back, and she ultimately did. But when she wasn't supposed to come back, a thought went through my mind, which was, oh, had I known she wasn't coming back, I probably would have hugged her for a little bit longer, because now I'm not going to see her for a bit. And then she did come back. So I will remember to do that when she leaves this time. But it actually occurred to me, in my mind, it's like, oh, well, I'll see you in a few days, bye. As opposed to, yeah, we never know. We just never know. Right?
It's funny that the summer before my mom passed away, her brother, who lives in Western Canada, he came to visit her. And the whole visit, it was like there was this feeling of like, this is the last time they're going to see each other. And sure enough, it ended up being the case. And for I mean, my mom was ill and stuff, but anyway, he ended up passing away too in this past March. But there's also a sense of like, well, we'll probably never see him again. Not that he was going to die or anything, but it was just like, he's on the other side of the country. This will probably, and it made the visit, us appreciate the visit more, I think, because I went golfing with him. We had like one of the best, like, we didn't either of us play particularly well, but we just enjoyed being on the golf course and how green the grass was and the birds. And I don't know, like, I hadn't considered it before, but there was something about knowing that this was the last time we were going to be together. It made it seem special, I guess.
How can we live our lives like that? That's the question I have. At Christmas time, me and my brother and my sister, we did something we never did. And I'm really glad we did it. We went to the gym and played pickleball to my gym, and I taught them how to play pickleball, and we played for a couple hours. We did that twice over the holiday. It was just so much fun. We've never done anything like that before.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Vanessa. How can we live our lives like
Mm.
that?
Mm.
That joy and appreciation of whoever we're
Yeah.
with.
Mm.
That extra long hug.
Yeah.
Page 258, he says, you must not be afraid to discuss death. Don't get
Mm.
uptight about it. Instead, let the knowledge help you to live every moment of your life fully, because every moment matters.
Mm.
I love this little story too of like, death shows up and you're like, oh, come on, death, I need another week. And death is like, what are you talking about? I gave you 52 weeks last year. Look what you
Yeah.
did with them. Nothing.
I could hear him say that.
Yeah.
I have to find his podcast because he must have found the podcast where he speaks to that outward sound. Um, I don't know. I know our pages are all different. This is at the top of my page 161, but he says, well, previous to it, he says, very few people are told when they're going to die. Almost everyone just takes a breath and doesn't know they didn't take another. So start using every day to let go of that scared part of you that won't let you live life fully.
Mm.
And I just created a little post using the, courage is doing things in wet pants, essentially. And that just makes me think of that, how many things do we talk ourselves out of because it feels scary or it looks scary or we think we will be scared, or there are just so many opportunities that
Mm.
we can convince ourselves not to go for whatever reason. Like, let go of that scared part of you that won't let you live life fully.
Mm. Yeah, but once again, to me, what I said before, it's not about being scared of dying, you're scared of living. That's why we get stuck. So
Yeah.
many.
That's why we get stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says towards the end, what actually gives life meaning is the willingness to live it.
Mm.
Be willing to live your life.
Mm.
This idea of being fully present and living your life, it reminds me of the Sid Banks thing of him. Every time he had a cup of tea, he would say, "This is the best cup of tea I ever had." And I've made up in my mind like the story of course it's the best cup of tea he ever had because he's being fully present to it. Like, and I drink a lot of tea, so I always think about like, if I was fully present with my cup of tea, I would be like marveling at this mug and like the feel of it in my hand, the weight of it, the smoothness of the finish. And as I put it up to my face, feeling the warmth of the tea and the smell, and then tasting it and feeling just like I'm not just getting through my cup of tea as fast as I can. It's actually like savoring it, enjoying every moment of it,
Mm.
which I often forget to do. But
Mm.
I think that's what Sid was pointing to in terms of being fully present.
Yeah.
And I guess in that, living life, it doesn't have to be grandiose or out doing amazing, adventurous things every day, or, it can be that. It can be savoring your cup of tea or, playing pickleball with your siblings and you've never done that before and having a great time and building a different connection. It can be many things. It can come in lots of forms. It doesn't have to be. Yeah, we don't have to feel like we're missing out in life because we're not running around like headless chickens doing this, that, and everything that looks amazing. It's, appreciating what is, I guess.
I was thinking of Michael Singer on the weekend because my daughter and I went to see my nephew play hockey, and we went from that to a PWHL game, the Professional Women's League in Toronto. I never drive to Toronto, but because we had to go to this other game, we drove. So after the game, getting out of Toronto was a friggin' nightmare. But we're sitting in traffic, and I was just like, you know, channeling my inner Michael Singer, going like, this is great. I'm stuck here in the car with my daughter. She has nowhere to escape to, so we can talk. And we ended up putting my phone was dying, so we plugged my phone in the car, and then it as soon as you plug it in, it turns the music on the phone. And I never would have thought to play my music, but I'm like, oh, let's just listen to music. And then it's all the songs that I love. And then so we're both singing along, and I'm like, it was the greatest time. We spent like over an hour in the car singing songs and having her kind of being forced to listen to my playlist. Um, and then a song would come on and she'd know it. I'm like, how do you know this song? And she's like, you're such an idiot. I don't live under a rock,
That's exactly the term that came into my mind.
Yeah.
I don't live under a rock.
Yeah.
But that's living life, right?
Yeah.
That's living life right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being stuck in the car with your daughter listening to your favorite tunes, that's living life. Yeah.
So Elaine, you were
That's
going to say
such
something?
I think I cut Elaine off. What were
No,
you
it's
thinking
okay.
about?
No, it's okay. Yeah.
This question, and his question of, if you knew you only had a week to live. When I read that, I was thinking of the question that we, that when we ask clients to go into the future and imagine you've had a great year and what accounts for that and what have you been up to, and then I was thinking, imagine we just asked them that question.
Yeah.
What if you only have a week to live? What would you be doing? What would you not be doing? What would you not be doing? What would you not be stressing over? What would you not be worrying about? And then I guess that, it comes, ultimately, I'm asking myself that. So what would I not be stressed about, not be worried about?
It's funny when you said that, I had this idea to phrase it as like, there's good news and there's bad news, and it's both the same news. You only have a week to live.
Yeah.
It is a great question. Something, I don't know, something worth experimenting with, I think.
Yeah, I think it is.
And it's interesting. I don't know about the rest of you, but like, even when I imagine asking a client that question, the first thought in my head was like, I can't do that, or I shouldn't do that, or what that might be too much for somebody.
Yeah.
I'll only ask it when I think they're ready. Like all these kinds of
conditions.
scenarios are starting to unwind. So I think that in and of itself is quite interesting and telling.
I have a client who I need to ask that question to. So interesting. It's the perfect question for her.
Really cuts to the chase, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, well, it's maybe a little better than what are you doing?
Yeah.
Or why are you doing what you're doing? Get on with life.
Yeah.
Well, I like it too. I mean, when I think about it, it's like, it's not, you don't have to contemplate like, why am I doing something, or how do I figure this out, or how do it's just like, you have a week left. Like, just get on with like, just go do what you want to do. Not, don't worry about, like, it's like Lynn was reading that part, let go of that little scared part of yourself that's holding you back.
It's kind of like, what do you got to lose? This is your last chance. And it's about what you want your life to be, not about what it was or what you need to let go of. There's no time for that. You just got to jump on the train and go for it. If you had a week to live.
It says here, if you challenge yourself to live as though it were your last week, Your mind may come up with all kinds of suppressed desires. So, you have to understand that this is your attempt to get special experiences from life that makes you miss the actual experience of life. Life is not something you get. It's something you experience.
Mhm.
It's death that makes life precious. It's scarcity that makes things precious. I like that word, precious.
Precious.
What movie is that from?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
Precious.
yeah, my
Precious.
precious. Yeah. Where
Some
was
of
that,
my-
Greg? In between what and what? I'd like to find that, and I have no idea.
Uh,
Give me a clue.
For me, it's the end of 261, start at 262. The first line in that first paragraph, if you challenge yourself to live.
Oh, got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got it.
And then those
Yeah.
last two lines are kind of, I skipped ahead. I did just highlighted
Yeah.
those separately.
And also
love-
the whole thing of life exists with or without you.
Mhm.
You know, it's going on regardless of our interference.
It's been going on
Sorry,
for
Elaine, I did it
billions of
again.
years.
It's been going on for billions of years.
Yeah. And the cycle repeats itself. I love this, it's on my page 163. The wise realize that in the end, life belongs to death. Death is the one who comes in his own time to take life from you. Death is the landlord and you're just the tenant. I love that.
Yeah.
And then indeed in our language, he says, people say things like he's living on borrowed time
Mm.
or he's got a new lease on life. It's just the tenants. Yeah.
And then he's kind of talking about, in one respect, it's being a bit oblivious, and then you're the one who throws your life away. You waste every second. You get in your car, drive from here to there. You don't see anything. You're not even there. You're busy thinking about what you're going to do next, a month ahead of yourself, or even a year. You're not living life. You're living mind. I love that.
Some of my favorite stories are of elderly people who decide, they know they're going to die very soon. They might have a terminal illness. They decide to go on a world tour.
Mm.
And, what's the worst that can happen is they can die somewhere very interesting. That's a real possibility, but they're grabbing hold of what's left of their life and living their dreams.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'd wager that most of them get home. Like that's, I don't know if this is real or not, but when I think back to people I've known, like whatever their last mission is or thing that they wanted to do, somehow they've managed to do it. My mom's friend, she took her grandkids to Disney World, and like she could have dropped dead at any moment, but she made it through the whole week. She had good times and bad times in terms of her health while she was there, but she made it home. And when she was home, she was like, "Okay,
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good."
Yeah.
My mother did a similar thing. She knew she had cancer, but she refused to go find out about it until after Christmas. Christmas was her favorite holiday.
Mm.
And then the day after Christmas, I went with her, and that was the beginning of the end for her. But she was determined to have a lovely last Christmas.
Beautiful. He says here, so death actually gives meaning to life. Death is your friend. Death is your liberator. For God's sake, do not be afraid of death. Try to learn what it's saying to you.
Love it.
My coach Ollie, he introduced me to the concept of the pain doctor, which I think the pain doctor is like the cousin of death. But the pain doctor is always trying to tell you something too, like, and if you don't listen, he'll tell you louder and more sternly.
Turn it up a notch.
That's so interesting. Yesterday, I got out of my car and the right side of my sacrum was killing me, and I just stopped outside in the cold and paid attention to it. By the time I got in the house, it was gone and it hasn't come back at all.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's not working for my back. How did you do that?
Well, I asked it what it wanted me to feel, and I felt it. And it doesn't always work, but I find that works for me quite often. Every single time I'm surprised.
That works for me too, Vanessa. I don't have any like huge pain going on at the moment, but I have had like really bad back pain, and I had it for a long time. And interestingly, when I stopped thinking, I mean, secretly, I'm pretty sure that when I get like big pain, I actually think I'm going to die. Secretly, I won't tell anybody that, but it's secret, Oh my goodness, this is it. Like, it's never going to get better. This is the end of me. This means I'm not going to be able to do ABCD, and I'll never be able to do that. And that's it. That's terrible. Can't do anything about it. But when I take a thought and some care and some love, which will then tell me things like, well, yeah, you're trying to live your life with back pain in exactly the same way as you do when you haven't got back pain. Now, that doesn't make sense, because this pain is telling you that you can't be living your life. You can't climb the mountain. You can't do this and you can't do that. So it's telling me something. So, but that mere act of actually listening to what it's telling me. So yes, it hurts. What are you trying to say to me? What are you telling me? What are you doing here? And it worked for me as well, and it still does. Sometimes I just even go out walking with the dog and I manage to feel twinges here, there, and everywhere. It's an age thing. And as it happens immediately, I might just slow down. I still go out like I was about 12 or something and sort of fast walk everywhere. Sometimes it's just not the case. And so I get slight twinges at the top of my buttock, for pushing with the walking, have you? And I just slow down and listen, and it'll go away. It's incredible. And then I can actually speed up again and go back to where I was before. But yeah, it works.
And it occurred to me your secret. Oh, I'm gonna die.
Yes.
That's a message.
Yeah.
It's your last week. Start living your lives.
Exactly. Like, this is crazy. What are you doing?
Well, as you were speaking, when you were saying, well, what if it is now? I'll never be able to do this. I'll never be able to do that. That won't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You won't be here.
Exactly.
Unfinished to-do list.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. As he would say, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
No, it's so funny.
He says, if you're living every experience fully, then death doesn't take anything from you.
I like that.
And you really don't need more time before death. What you need is more depth of experience during the time you're given. Even if something terrible happens, view it as just another experience of life.
I love the part where he says, your death actually helps you get your life back by making you pay attention to the moment. Like, that's sort of mind-blowing for me, because that's indeed where everything happens. So, because all the rest, even perhaps, you know, I want to be doing this, I want to do that, and before I die, I want to make sure I get my trip around the world in, and I want to do this and I want to do that. But if you draw it back to now and live that instant to the full, then you've honestly got everything, at least in my view, you've got everything that you need. And that makes sense of Viktor Frankl's book and story on the Holocaust. Like how he managed to survive that and live through it and be okay, actually, in the sense of living literally moment to moment to the full. You know, imagining that just as we four are sitting here right now, like no big deal, we're each sitting in a room somewhere, we're not out climbing mountains or doing wonderful things or doing it, but it's here, this is where it's happening right now. And this is just wonderful.
Mm.
And that's one of the things I do indeed, and have for a little while, you know, I try to remember on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis, just remember that fact. It's now, it's happening now. Life is now.
Well, if this was my last week, I'd still want to record this episode. It's like I got to get one more episode recorded before I'm done. Like this is.
Well, you know, yeah, Greg, just saying, you know, just saying.
Let's read the last paragraph or so here in the chapter. It says, "Don't be afraid of death. Let it free you. Let it encourage you to experience life fully. But remember, it's not your life. You should be experiencing the life that's happening to you, not the one you wish was happening. Don't waste a moment of life trying to make other things happen. Appreciate the moments you are given. Don't you understand that every minute you're a step closer to death? This is how to live your life. You live it as though you were on the verge of death, because you are."
Yeah, yeah, to that. I'd actually like to think that since I've been on this, let's say, coaching 3Ps train, and also my work before with shiatsu, you know, very much close to sort of Buddhism and this kind of thing. And having been through periods of ill health, let's say, I'd like to think that because of my new view on death or life, I'm actually less closer to death now than I was then. I'm actually not one step closer, not if I compare it to before. Not because I was unwell before, and now I'm not, but because it was perhaps my perspective on life and everything that Michael Spitzing has spoken about in this chapter affected my well-being, which in my view and my consideration has sort of kind of in that period accelerated. I was definitely closer to death. But now that my mind is free of a lot of these thoughts, I actually believe that I've extended my own lifespan. True, I can still step out in front of a car. Nobody can take that away, you know, yes. But in
Look
terms
both
of
ways before you cross the street.
yeah, exactly. But you know, in both ways, however you look at it, we are responsible for our life and for our death, if you like. Only us.
Khan introduced me to this idea he got from somebody else, QTR, quality time remaining. It's like, it's made me, like when I started interviewing people for my Happy Hockey Dad thing. So I got a friend of my sister's that I met at the hockey game on Saturday, gonna come on with me this afternoon. But it's like, I appreciate the fact that somebody's willing to give up 30 minutes of their quality time remaining on this planet to spend with me. Like, I think that's like, I'm more grateful in the face of this, the preciousness of that half hour of this person's life, than I was before. Real, I never would have given it much of a second thought. But it's like, that's something to be appreciative of, I think.
Yeah.
And same with anyone listening to these recordings, for them to spend 45 minutes of their QTR with us, listening to us talk about Michael Singer's book is very something to be grateful for as well.
Mm.
A good place to wrap up. So next week we're on to chapter 18, The Secret of the Middle Way. Whatever that is. We'll see you next week.